Okay, I'm gonna walk you guys through the simple mixture for sourdough pancakes. Um, I like to use goat's milk, so that's what I'm gonna be using. And we'll start off with about a cup of goat's milk. Pour that in there. The recipe also calls for a half a stick of butter cooled. And what's meant by that is that it is not solid. This is a frozen stick of butter. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this in half with a nice sharp knife. And then because I can't crumple this up and put it in, I'm just going to simply unpeel the paper and cut this into tiny pads. And this will help the butter get to room temperature a little bit quicker. So I'm just going to do this on the countertop here. And the reason I'm not so concerned about this is because I'm not going to add my starter just yet anyway. I'm going to add the starter a little bit later. So this butter will have plenty of time to get to room temperature. There we go. Put it in there. You can see the nice clumps. The next thing is a cup of flour. So let's see. I'm going to go ahead and use regular white flour for this. Actually, I'm going to be using bread flour because my white flour is out in the garage. But this comes out to about 1 cup. There we go. I'm gonna let this sit. I really don't need to mix it all in just yet. And then as far as the sugar goes, really all it comes down to with the sugar is a teeny tiny little bit. A teaspoon of sugar is plenty good. You can even do a little bit less, like half a teaspoon. I'll do about a teaspoon like that, a little bit of sugar. And I am not going to put in my sea salt or my baking soda tonight. I will leave that for tomorrow. And my egg. My sea salt, and my baking soda will be tomorrow morning. And the reason for that is because those elements will actually inhibit some of the starter growth. So I want to leave those out. Now, what you can do next, if you'd like, is take a fork and just sort of get some of that flour in there. It's not a necessity, but just kind of mix it up a little bit. And you're gonna let this sit out overnight. You can see that the bread or the butter clumps, those butter pads, are still way too hard to melt into this or even crumble into it. And that's perfectly okay. We're just gonna let that kind of do its thing about an hour or two. And I'm gonna put a lid on this, which is just a plate. I'm gonna put a plate right on top of it. And call it a night. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. Won't call it a night. I will put the starter in after that. My starter is beginning to show some nice signs of expanding. And let's just say, for the sake of things, I'll do this now. For the sake of things, it's about 8 o'clock tonight. What I would do is then come back here and put in my 1/4 cup of starter. Comes out to about this much. Add that in just like that. And make sure I mix this up really well. That's gonna seem kind of hard at first because of the butter, but if you let the butter get to room temperature, this should mix up really well, and it's going to be this super runny, somewhat lumpy batter mixture that by tomorrow morning will be nice and even, or at least when you start mixing it tomorrow morning, it'll be nice and even and ready to go for this afternoon, or for the afternoon. So I'm going to cover this and let this sit for the night. Again, what I did was I put in the ingredients of 1 cup of 1 cup of goat's milk, half a stick of butter, a 1/4 cup of the sourdough starter, a cup of flour, and a teaspoon of sugar. So I've got 5 ingredients in there, and that's it. The rest will be added tomorrow. We can add those when class starts. You're welcome to leave this out overnight. Just put a plate over top of it so that it doesn't evaporate, and you're good to go. So there's that. The next thing that I would do before I go to bed is I would take my starter, because I just used some, I want to replenish it, and I would go ahead and do the same thing where I take about a tablespoon of wheat flour or 2 tablespoons of wheat flour and add a teaspoon or a tablespoon of water. So I've got my 2 tablespoons of flour in there, add some water, mix it all up to get that perfect consistency that you guys had earlier today. Put the lid on this and leave it out overnight. That does it.